Well, that was something. You know what's weird? This movie is both as weird as I thought it would be, and yet not as weird as I thought it would be. That's the best way I could describe this movie without spoiling anything. So let's just dive right in. So Beau's Afraid is a movie that was directed by Ari Aster, is also written by him, and it stars Joaquin Phoenix as a man named Beau Wasserman. He's a 40-something-year-old guy who is mild-mannered, and yet he has several paranoias and fears out there. And when he has to go visit his mother, he encounters all these strange things that kind of occur while on his journey, and he has to conquer his fears before he can meet his mom. And it's basically one big, long therapy session. So this was a movie I was definitely looking forward to because I am a fan of Ari Aster's work on Hereditary and Midsommar, and I was like wondering what he was going to do next. I was also interested in hearing that Joaquin Phoenix was also going to be in the lead role in this movie, and Joaquin Phoenix just doesn't pick random movies to just star in. He's very picky about the movies that he stars in, and I was intrigued by this movie. It sounded it was going to be very different from a lot of movies that was out there. Definitely very different from what Ari Aster has done. And this movie is weird to me because I know a lot of people complain about movies these days, and they complain about how there's nothing original out there. It's just remakes, it's just sequels, it's just all these big movies that are just connected to larger things. It's like, when are we going to get something that's unique and different and original or something like that? Well, here's a movie that's definitely very different. And what's the response? People hate it. I'm like, come on. Come on. You wanted something different? Well, here's something different. It may be wild, but it's definitely different. So I'm going to do something a little bit differently. I'm going to take a page from Zach Pope's review, and I'm going to talk about what I don't like about this movie first, because I think there are a lot more things about this movie that I do like than dislike. First off, the pacing of this movie is not very good. The movie's 3 hours long, and you can definitely feel it at times, particularly in the two middle sections, I would say. Like, this movie's broken up into 4 parts, and the 2 in the middle are kind of slower than the first and the last one, I would say. Definitely kind of felt it a little bit more in those parts. There are also some moments where I kind of have some questions that are just unanswered, and I don't know if that's intentional or not. I know Ari Aster is a director who, based on his first 2 movies, they are incredibly intentional. So maybe some of the unanswered questions in this movie are intentional, so that's kind of iffy to me. And admittedly, I was kind of expecting something weirder and something not as weird as what I just saw. And also, there's this one pointless storyline in there. It's one of the ones in the middle, involves Amy Ryan and Nathan Lane. To me, it didn't really mesh with the rest of the story. I felt like it added nothing new. It didn't really add a whole lot to Beau's storyline. I don't know, maybe it does, and maybe if I rewatch this movie again, which I definitely do want to rewatch this movie again at some point, but I don't know when I'm going to do that again. But it right now it kind of just feels pointless to me because it doesn't really play a whole lot into the final finale of the movie. And I don't know, I definitely would have tightened that up a little bit. So what do I like about the movie? Mainly the actors are doing a fantastic job. Joaquin Phoenix is incredible in this movie as Beau. You definitely believe him in this role. He's really good at playing these like mild-mannered, paranoia-ridden losers, essentially. Like, that's the best way to describe Beau, honestly. He's just a loser. And you definitely feel sympathy for his character. And there's definitely moments where I'm like, oh, I feel bad for you, but I'm also kind of disturbed by you at the same time. Patti LuPone in this movie plays Beau's mother. She's not in the movie very much, and the movie does build up to her very well. And when she appears on screen, she is just menacing. She is just terrifying, and you definitely understand a lot more once she's on screen. I thought she was really good. The other actor who I thought did a really good job was Kylie Rogers, who is in that scene with Amy Ryan and Nathan Lane as this like stuck-up brat who encounters Beau at one point. I thought she was really good. I thought she was over the top. I thought the other actors do a fine job, but they don't stand out as well as those 3. And I also really like with this movie how anxiety feels to people rather than how anxiety is portrayed, because anxiety looks different to a whole bunch of people out there. It may be something like this, or maybe something that's completely different. And I feel like there's definitely a difference between how actors portray anxiety and like how they actually show anxiety, and this movie definitely shows that. I also really like with this movie how it shows how guilt and how shame can be paralyzing for a lot of people. It can stunt people from doing anything in their lives. I do think that's very fascinating. And I also really like in this movie how they portray things that may be absurd, but they sound normal. Like, they treat things that are that sound absolutely absurd or seem absurd, and they kind of act like it's normal. Like there's this one scene towards the beginning where Beau's walking in his neighborhood and there's a guy who's about to jump and he's like, "What's going on?" And this guy's like, "Oh, this guy's about to jump." They just sound so normal when they do it, and that is more terrifying to me than a lot of things in this movie. And I kind of feel like, and also it's the vice versa. They kind of make normal sounding things sound absolutely horrible. Like someone, Patty LuPone gets mad at Joaquin Phoenix for doing very normal things, and it's like, and it kind of resonated with me because I feel like it shows that again we kind of take things that are absurd and maybe we're just numb to them, and at the same time some things that may seem normal are seen as not normal to other people, and I do think that is very fascinating. This movie I felt was strangely therapeutic and very cathartic, and I'm also kind of thinking, even though I'm nowhere near as mentally unstable as Beau or mentally, you know, in that lane as Beau, I'm like, this is a very interesting movie, and I would kind of want to sit in a therapy session with Ari Aster to kind of know how his mind works. Because after watching this and Hereditary and Midsommar, I'm like, dude, there's something clearly wrong with this dude, but I'm intrigued by what's wrong with him. So, also, what I really like in this movie is how funny, how scary, how surprising this movie is, and it all kind of just blends very well. There are moments where I was just laughing at some of the absurdity of this movie. There are some moments where it's just definitely getting under my skin, and it was just very surprising throughout the entire movie. I also really dug the production design. Like, the town that Beau lives in is just very run down, it's just very destroyed, and I thought it was very well done, kind of. I also really like the production design in the third part of the movie, where I'm not going to spoil anything, but the production design looks a little bit cheap, and I feel like that's kind of the point of this movie. Again, I think Ari Aster is one of those filmmakers where if something doesn't look that great or something is there by mistake, it may not be a mistake after all. So I do think it does look really good overall. The production design towards the end of the movie, when you see the ending of the movie, is also really well done. It's terrifying. It's very interesting. It plays again into the whole how anxiety feels rather than how anxiety looks. That is very fascinating to see. I also really dug the use of music throughout this movie too. It's used minimally throughout the movie. Like, there are definitely some scenes where it builds up to like something that's going to be a big reveal, and that's really well done. But even the soundtrack isn't too bad, because again, it's very used, very minimally. Like, I never expected to hear a Mariah Carey song in this movie, and when you hear it and like what the context of the scene is, it's definitely very funny, very surprising, very shocking too. Beau is Afraid is a movie that honestly I'm not surprised by the reaction to it, but I'm also kind of annoyed by the reaction to it, because some people are out there saying, "Oh, this movie's too dark. This movie's too horrible. It makes no sense whatsoever." And I just keep going back and thinking, well, people wanted stuff that was like unique and different and just out there. You got a movie that's like that, and you just hate it because it's just so different. Don't get me wrong, this movie's not for everyone. Part of me is thinking you should know what you're getting into before watching this movie, but I also kind of want people to be surprised by this movie, so I guess it depends on the moviegoers. Like, if you kind of want to know, maybe you should know before you see it, in case you don't want to see it. Or if you kind of want to go in completely blank and you can give into the surrealism of the movie, it's definitely worth a watch at some point. And even though I do have issues with the pacing, and I do think there are some unanswered questions, and I kind of am debating about a few things, like, is this movie real? Like, is everything real? Because I feel like it definitely is not real. And I feel like the one storyline is incredibly pointless throughout the movie. I can't deny that the acting is really good. The camera work is fantastic. The use of music and the production design is fantastic. And I love the things it talks about, how guilt is paralyzing, how anxiety feels instead of how it actually is, and how absurd things feel normal and how normal things feel absurd. I do think it's a fascinating movie that I don't want to say people are just ignoring or hating on, but it's definitely something that I personally enjoyed. But then again, maybe I'm just like, I don't know, maybe I've just been looking for something like just so far out there, and this movie kind of satisfied that. But I can't deny that this movie did make me think, and also I kind of want to go back and look and see like if there was something that I missed. This movie is definitely worth watching at some point if you can get past the surrealism of it all. I will give Beau is Afraid, I'm going to go very high on this, 3.5 out of 4 stars. See it. So, What's your favorite Joaquin Phoenix movie? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.